Remember those red pins some people wore at the Academy Awards wanting a ceasefire? You will absolutely not believe the origin of that image. And when you do, you will never forget it. We're going to start with a horror story that has been brought back to prominence by the idiots at the Academy Awards a couple of days ago. You may have noticed some of the celebrities were wearing dog tags like Will Johnson and I are wearing, which is bring the hostages home now, which is a normal human thing to do when people are brutally taken from their homes, literally torn out of their beds while sleeping and taken hostages and kept in cages underground. You would think a normal reaction would be bring them home. But at the Academy Awards, there was a little bit of a different tone. And I'm going to give you a history lesson to start. There was a fellow named Vadim Nerzitz. He was a truck driver who moved from Russia to Israel. And a couple of years ago, he picked up his friend Yossi, and the two men were driving their little Ford Escort, and they got lost. They were headed to an army base, and they made a wrong turn. They ended up at a Palestinian roadblock, and instead of directing them to where they should have been going, the police, this was by Ramallah in Judea and Samaria, they took them into custody. Well, turns out there was a funeral that day in town in Ramallah, and a great number of people were congregating at the cemetery and decided what they really ought to do is go lynch these two young boys who were being held in the Palestinian jail. And what they did is one of the most horrific crimes in Israeli history. They overwhelmed the police station, took the boys to a building, and literally beat them to death. And as the one boy was dying, there is a lynch mob leader who, and this is not a joke, tore his heart out of his chest while it was still bleeding. And this crazy kid then went to the window, and this was the horrific picture that was publicized. He is screaming, "I have his heart's blood on my hands," and the crowd goes crazy in celebration. Now, I want you to memorize that bloody hand. It symbolizes the brutal murder of two Israeli young men that happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, there was a British photographer who was there, a guy named Mark Seeger. He attempted to film it. He was beaten for documenting it, and his camera was destroyed. He said it was the most barbaric thing I have ever seen in my life. By the time they got done beating the two boys, they didn't look like human beings anymore. It was that brutal. Now, in case those bloody hands look familiar, let me tell you where you just saw them, right here. That's the bloody hand on a pin that was worn by celebrity after celebrity at the Academy Awards. How interesting that they picked a symbol that in Israeli history is one of the most horrible things Israel ever experienced. And yet for these morons, I guess, or anti-Semites, anti-Zionists, whatever you call them, 400 artists called their new group Artists for a Ceasefire, and this is their pin. They're asking for justice for the Palestinians, but no justice for the murdered, the kidnapped, the raped, and so on. There's the hand, and this is where that handprint comes from.
And they were so proud to wear those pins, Barry, at the Oscars. They were so happy for it. They were so happy to say it, and it has nothing to do with ceasefire. Absolutely nothing. So just imagine all those people wearing those pins. They're being absolutely deceived. And I think that's been the whole synopsis of this, right? To deceive the masses, deceive so many people to believe that they're supporting something good when they're not.
I can't even imagine how the families of these two young boys felt watching the Academy Awards. It's a very watched show around the world, although some good news, it was the fourth worst viewership in Academy Awards history. The wokeness of these people has turned off the audiences to a great degree. But imagine you're the Israeli families of these boys seeing the bloody hands in your mind because you're seeing the bloody pins being worn by these Hollywood elites calling for ceasefire now. Not one of them said release the hostages. Not one of them condemned the murders, rapes, brutality, the putting babies in ovens, cutting babies out of wombs, cutting off the heads of parents in front of their children. They're just useful idiots. I don't know how else to say it.
It's pretty disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. But you know what? That's what the evil one does, Barry. They take something and then they put it out there and try to make it look beautiful. Really? I mean, I guess that's the reason why we have a George Floyd statue right now, because you have hardened criminals and they glorify the crime. They glorify the criminals. Same thing here. They create this button that's glorifying the deaths of two Israeli males, and they're all happy about it. And now they got everyone celebrating that thing again, and they're lying to them, telling they want to cease fire. If they actually want to cease fire, they would have been telling Hamas, cease fire. But Hamas already said that they're not going to stop firing. They're not going to stop. So that leaves Israel in one position? They can't stop. It's because of Hamas.
I guess, and it's been said on and off by the American administration, the war stops as soon as Hamas releases all the hostages and lays down their weapons, and the war's over. It's over.
Yeah.
The same way as Germany ended World War II and Japan ended World War II. They laid down their arms and unconditionally surrendered. But Hamas, as you just pointed out very insightfully, has turned down ceasefire. The Egyptians are trying to get him to ceasefire. The Qataris are trying to get him to ceasefire. The Saudi Arabians are trying to get him to ceasefire. The UN is demanding a ceasefire. Hamas has said no to everybody. So what do these Hollywood elites do? They tell Israel, forget the hostages, pull out of Gaza, just go away and everything is fine. And let the murderers continue to run Gaza. And probably in a month or 2 or 3, they will do it again. Now, why do I say that? Because all the leadership of Hamas has said they will repeat October 7th over and over and over again until Israel is destroyed and all the Jews and the Christians are dead. And yet, you have morons at the Academy Award, including one that's Jewish, acting like he would have been great in the concentration camps, happy to round up his fellow Jews because he is rejecting being Jewish. Well, the Nazis killed those guys too. They just killed them last.
Yeah. You know what? I don't understand. We know who did this horrific thing. We know that before October 7th, who was constantly sending rockets into Israel. And they have the nerve, Barry, to talk about a ceasefire. No one was screaming ceasefire then. No one was telling ceasefire after 13 days of them shooting rockets. It was 13 days of them shooting rockets every single day into Israel. Not a single time did you hear any of them saying ceasefire. Why not? Not a single one of them was saying ceasefire. But now all of a sudden, because Israel said, okay, we've had it, we're putting our foot down. Now they want a ceasefire because they poked that beehive, and now the bees have come out that beehive, and now they're upset. Wait. You need to stop. Go back in the beehive so I can poke you again.
And you know what? It's going to repeat itself with Hezbollah. They fired hundreds of rockets into northern Israel. There are hundreds of thousands of Israelis living in bomb shelters evacuated. Israel has given them a deadline of next week. And if they don't stop, Israel will invade and kill them because they have to. Because northern Israel is being bombed into smithereens by Hezbollah. Do you hear any condemnation from the UN, the United States, or any of the Arab countries? Stop bombing Israel. Crickets.
No, nothing.
Crickets.
And you know what? I have one problem with that, Barry. that they're waiting another week. That's my problem. Stop telling them that, stop giving them warnings, stop dropping the leaflets. Go ahead and get rid of the cockroaches. I mean, there's enough is enough. This cannot continue on.
I would like to nominate Will Johnson as American embassy representative to Jerusalem instead of the cockamamie Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer, which we're going to talk about in a minute. New policy of surrender.
Yeah, and then there's Blinken too. They're all wanting to do a ceasefire. I mean, you can't until you get the ones that are trying to harm you. You can't, because they're not going to stop.